Warning: the content of this podcast may be disturbing and could be triggering to some listeners. The Yandere Simulator After Dark podcast should not be accessed by minors, as we will be discussing a game intended for mature audiences. Please listen with caution. Thank you and enjoy the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Yandere Simulator After Dark, the very first podcast of its kind where we dive deep into the extensive history and theories surrounding the lore. I'm your host, Emery, and I hope you are all having a fantastic morning, afternoon, or night wherever in the world you are. Thank you all so much for giving me time from your day, and it's an absolute honor to be here. So, first, in case you missed it, I am now live streaming exclusively on TikTok on weekends, particularly Friday and Saturday and sometimes Sunday. No specific times at this point. However, I am more likely to be live after 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time due to my hectic work schedule. Due to the holidays, I will be receiving many more hours until after Christmas. After then, I might be able to have a more solid schedule. Our streams are a ton of fun, so come hang out with us sometime. And I say ours because you, the listener too, are also a part of it. My username will be in the description below. So today we are going to switch gears a little bit. And as a result, this is liable to be a longer episode. Initially, this episode was supposed to be about Kijiyoshi, but due to lack of information about her senpai, I don't really feel like an episode about her would be long enough or really meet my standards in quality. So, instead, the topic of discussion will be all about Megami Psycho, the 10th and final rival in the modern timeline, and likely the biggest pain in my ass to exist when she is released. So disclaimer, if I butcher names, I'm sorry. Megami was born to parents Ishiru and Suma Saiko and appears to be born the same year as Ayano. Ishiru, her father, was next in line and eventually became the CEO of Saiko Corporation, which specialized in manufacturing various products such as electronics. Suma Saiko was initially a CEO of her own company and was actually a rival of Saiko Corp. I didn't know that at first. Kind of caught me by surprise. Eventually, Suma liquidated her company and became a secretary in a test of competence, agreeing to an arranged marriage with Ishiru. Wow. But we will go more into depth about Megami's family in future episodes. So Megami, if anyone in the game is perfect, it's her. She's beautiful, she's wealthy, she has extensive self-defense training, and has excelled in essentially everything, as she was taught from a young age to be a very quick learner. Since she is set to become the eventual CEO of Psychocorp, she faced extensive training throughout her life to become the perfect person for her job. Her own grandfather, Saisho Saiko, who was the founder of Psychocorp, get this, even gone so far as to micromanage the way she and her younger brother Kensho were raised, so they would develop certain personality traits and be less likely to form less favorable characteristics. Yikes. Thankfully, Saisho adjusted these instructions a little bit, so Megami and Kensho would have more personality than their soulless father. As Megami aged, she lived her life as though cameras were on her the entire time, even if they weren't. She was taught to present herself in a dignified manner at all times. The description of her upbringing reminds me of a hospital, cold, sterile, and clinical, and most of her early childhood was spent inside the Psycho Corporation. When her formal education began, so did her CEO training. Unfortunately, she didn't really have many friends because she was influenced to believe that desiring playtime or feeling loneliness was a form of weakness. That is so depressing. I actually found a very interesting piece regarding Megami's childhood, regarding the only time she ever had someone in her life that she considered a friend. When Megami was a young girl, she attended a fundraiser event hosted by the Psycho Corporation. Many of the richest and most influential people in the world were in attendance. Megami was surrounded by billionaires and the children of billionaires, many of them her own age. She followed her parents around the event as they spoke to everyone in attendance. She introduced herself politely, as she had been instructed to, but she felt no connection with any of the people she met, even other kids her own age, except one. This girl, the daughter of some of the richest people in the room, was openly annoyed, seeming to hate the event and everyone present. The girl and Megami were left alone with one another while their parents talked, and the girl spoke openly and frankly about her feelings. She talked about how stifling the atmosphere was, how uncomfortable her dress was, and how all of the people at the event seemed fake. She said she hated how many expectations her parents had of her, and that she wished she had been born into a poor family instead of a rich one, because if she had been born poor, then she would have probably been free to live whatever life she wanted, instead of being forced to be molded into the person her parents wanted her to be. Megami's eyes grew wider, and her mouth slowly dropped open as she realized that this girl was the only person she had ever met in her life that she could actually relate to. We're going to talk about that in a second. She spent the rest of the evening with that girl, sitting on the railing of a balcony underneath the stars, discussing everything they hated about their families and their lives. They promised to stay in touch and meet up again whenever their busy schedules would allow for it. To this day, that girl is the only person that Megami has ever considered a friend. So this next section, I want to warn you before we go any further, there is a very brief mention of animal abuse. So if this nauseates you, makes you upset, or triggering in any way, you might want to skip ahead for a few seconds. It upsetted me a ton. So I just kept any mention of it to a bare minimum. So I just wanted to warn you before we got into this very brief part here. When Megami was 7 years old, she was forced by her father to do something unforgivable. She had to kill the one thing in the world that she loved most, her pet hamster. No form of weakness would ever be tolerated in the family, and her love for her pet was viewed as such. This cruel act was introduced by Saisho Saiko, Megami's grandfather, and was an extremely cruel exercise for the child to prove their loyalty. This prepares them for the possibility to do literally anything for their family. Now listen, guys. Listen. I've heard of loyalty, but this takes it to a whole new extreme. Saisho Saiko was indeed a psycho. I despise his family already. Like, what the hell's wrong with this guy? Like, who does that? Who does that? So anyway, Megami, she attended elite schools in person, designated for rich or genius children. However, I've noticed there's a bit of a large gap between this time and the start of her 9-week absence from academy. So years ago, long before I even considered blogging, podcasting, or anything, I found a large piece of Megami's backstory regarding her daily routine. I'm not really sure if it's well known or not. I've never personally seen anybody talk about it much, but I still found it wildly fascinating. So, I'm going to read to you Megami's daily routine during said 9-week absence, and it proves a lot of insight to the kind of life that Megami is forced to live. So to begin, Yandere Dev imagines Megami living on a cruise ship during her 9-week absence. Every day, immediately after she wakes up, she is asked a series of difficult questions by an attendant. These questions are related to the difficulties of running a business and managing a company. The purpose of these questions first thing in the morning is to measure her ability to make tough calls, even when she's not prepared or at a full mental capacity. Afterwards, she is told what choices her predecessors made when faced with the same decisions. Then, she is served a meal designed to be as healthy and nutritious as possible without regard for how it tastes. As she eats, she is briefed on recent decisions made by Psycho's current CEO, the status of Psycho's stocks, the recent public perception of Psycho, the performance of Psycho's newest products, and the current operations of Psycho's competitors. When she is finished eating, she sits at her laptop and addresses the duties of a student council president. She responds to concerns from teachers, gives instructions to her subordinates in the student council, hears about anything tragic that happened the previous day at school, etc. After this, she attends class, in quotations, attends class, by accessing the webcam of a laptop that sits on her desk in class 2-2. She asks the teacher's questions, answers the teacher's questions, and generally participates in class like a normal student, just without a physical presence. She even stands and bows at the beginning of class. Usually, the material that is being taught to her is something she learned years ago, and she is often bored and busying herself by reading more advanced material while class is going on. Huh. Not really surprised, though. I'm not gonna lie, not surprised. During the time of day when the students of Academy leave class for physical education, Megami jogs around the deck of the cruise ship and performs various other exercises as recommended by a personal coach. The deck of the cruise ship is large enough to provide her with enough space to perform a variety of sports, such as basketball, mini golf, volleyball, ping pong, boxing, croquet, and, of course, swimming. Because there are no other students with her on board the ship, Megami competes with various attendants who are ordered not to hold back against her in competitions despite their difference in age. Wow. Although this is the only time Megami does anything that a normal person might consider fun, Megami finds very little enjoyment in doing sports aboard a cruise ship because there are no high stakes to make things interesting. She has suggested that the loser of a match should be punished by being tossed overboard and having to climb back up to the deck of the ship without assistance. But her father forbade it. Okay, maybe she's a little bit of a psycho too. I mean, it's probably fine, right, guys? Right? Right? So, to simulate the experience of cleaning time, Megami mops the deck of the cruise ship herself during a point in time when her classmates are cleaning the school after classes end. During the time when most students would be enjoying club activities, Megami is once again performing student council duties, often for hours at a time. After the time of day when the school closes, Megami undergoes self-defense training from one of Japan's top martial artists. In the time remaining and the day before it ends, Megami undergoes a CEO simulation where she role plays in various scenarios as if she was the CEO of Psycho and had to handle all of this responsibility. These simulations are often based on the CEO's actual experiences in the previous day. Duh. But often made more difficult with additional complications so that Megami has to go through harder situations than her father actually did. Wow. Megami goes to bed at a very strict time in order to be well rested for the next day, especially for the barrage of questions that she'll face in the morning. At the end of the day before bedtime, Megami must report to her father and tell him about her day. In every one of these conversations, she begs to return to Academy, but her father rejects this proposal. Each conversation is more intense than the last. I'll jump overboard and swim to Academy if I have to. Okay, I sounded a little bit like Kizan on that bit. Ignore me. Megami's pleas were always ignored until week 10, that is. At least once throughout the day, a mock assassination attempt is carried out, in which Megami is abruptly attacked by one of her attendants and must defend herself. Sometimes this occurs during the hours when she must normally be sleeping. Megami is allowed to set booby traps around her room to thwart would-be assassins. Megami has not been successfully, quote, killed by an assassin in over a year. Megami, while blessed financially, was born into a prison in its own way. I can't speak for anybody else, but it would not surprise me in the slightest if her befriend mission would be to somehow help her escape, just like how her aunt escaped from the psycho's death grip all those years ago. In the modern-day mode of Yandere Simulator, Ayano can go into the basement and find a postcard from Ishigo addressed to her mother, Ryoba. Dear Ryoba, today I will be leaving Japan with no intention of returning. You already know the reasons why. However, I could not bear the thought of leaving without speaking to my only friend one last time. Please forgive this unorthodox method of getting into contact with you. My father's men monitor my movements and communications very closely. Establishing a secure way to communicate with you was very difficult, but I have done it. There will be a brief window of opportunity that will allow us to speak without being monitored. I have timed the delivery of this postcard to coincide with that window. If you wish to speak with me one last time, call this number immediately. 75067-5708. In the event that we miss our brief opportunity and never speak again, I just wanted to say one thing. Thank you for being my friend when no one else would. Signed, Ishigo Psycho, January 1st, 1990. If there is one takeaway from Megami's story, it's that money isn't everything. But I'd rather cry in a Ferrari, but we're not going to talk about that today. I kind of can't help but feel bad for everyone born into that family. Because in my honest opinion, this almost seems like Megami, Kensho, and her father and her aunt were all victims of psychological abuse. I mean, if you sit and you think about it, it's a very abusive family. They really are. Because they control their kids' every move. They neglect their needs. They force them into this life. They can't own pets. They can't have friends. They can't have any kind of life like any other kid their age. And they subject these poor kids into animal abuse just to prove loyalty. Yeah, this is definitely abusive. There's no question. And this is all because of one man. One of Megami's ancestors. And his twisted views towards humanity. His twisted views towards anyone deemed less than perfect. That's all I have for you today. Thank you all so much for tuning in and listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share with all your Yandere Sim fan friends. I'll see you all next time. Take care, everyone.